Welcome back, guys. It's day 21 of the Grinding It Up challenge, and I decided to make this episode another live play session. So since I've been playing a lot of deep stack tables, regular tables exclusively, I decided to make this session a Zoom session, and since Zoom is so fast and since we can just fast fold, I hope it's going to make up for some interesting spots. And I'm also going to talk about results, of course, which I don't like too much at the moment because I'm down swinging again. After yesterday's session, which took me up here again, I decided to take a shot at the 16NL deep stack tables. Since, you know, I've been running so good at the regular 10NL deep stack tables, I thought like 16NL isn't that big of a jump, and we have quite a bit of money behind. So we can just take that shot, and I decided to do that together with a student of mine who sweated me during a coaching session. And actually the session went awesome in the beginning, and I made a lot of money in the first couple of hands, and then I had a pretty big cooler situation, which, you know, it just happened. Maybe I should have left the table because, you know, I couldn't really. It's kind of tough because at the deep stack tables you do want to get the max amount of payoff for your strong hands. It's kind of tough. If I think I'm gonna go for a thin value bet on the river. I think he's gonna have a king a lot of the time, and you know, he can have like put me on a bluff and call down with the jack as well. So I think we can actually go for 3 streets here, and he called us down with a jack. So yeah, in that session yesterday I chipped up pretty nicely in the beginning, and then I had this $32 stack. It was a little bigger than that actually. My opponent had a $32 stack, and you know, it was just one of those standard situations. I had aces, he had jacks, and it was a 5-bet pot. I actually 5-bet pretty big, and he flatted the 5-bet. The flop came jack high, and the rest is history. But you know, those kind of things happen. It was one of the biggest. It was actually, I think it was the biggest part of the entire challenge so far. It was a little bit above $64. I'm not sure if I've won a bigger pot at 10NL deep stack, because that might actually be the case. I can't really remember. I would have to look it up. But yeah, that stung a little because that made up a big chunk of that downer. The rest was just, I just dropped this morning by, you know, I just couldn't hit any flops, couldn't win any pots. It was just one of those sessions, one of those days where you just can't help but grind through it. And that's what we're going to do from now on. We're going to try and grind our way back up, looking to play some 10NL again, mixing 10NL deep stack with some Zoom poker. So, live play session, I flop a pair of 7s in a blind battle. Turn is an ace. Doesn't look like a great card. Should usually bet that card, but it's kind of tough. I'm torn between check calling, check folding, and betting. This is really close. I think I'm going to check. I actually think that the opponent is going to hit that turn quite often. And I actually don't like check calling too much because you can actually have a lot of ace-x type hands. And since the river perfectly fits the range that he's probably calling this flop and turn with, betting the turn with, I'm going to check fold on the river. I actually think the turn is going to be a check fold most of the time. Yeah, so, you know, I was going to talk about something 4x against a mid-stacker, that's a fold, that I've been thinking about, and it's concerning taking shots. I think there's a little bit of the psychological issue, and it doesn't really matter whatever stakes you're playing, if you're trying to move up from 2NL to 5NL, or if you're moving from 100NL to 200NL, or if you're like a mid-stakes player and you're moving up to high stakes, whatever. I actually think that there might be a psychological issue that I have been thinking about lately. Taking shots can be quite risky for so many players, I guess, in a sense that, you know, it does affect your decision-making process when you're at a higher level that you're not really used to. For me, I've come to realize this when I always come to realize this when I play the challenge, because it doesn't really matter whether I'm moving up from 2 to 5 NL or whether I'm moving up from 100 to 200 NL, because the feelings are the same. You know, I'm trying to make a shot work. Psychologically, I'm really invested into this, and I'm really looking to win. And I hope, deep inside, I hope that this shot doesn't fail, even though I have already accepted that it might, and you know, it has happened before, like a couple of times during this challenge and during my previous challenges as well. So it does happen all over the place. But you know, deep inside, you always are rooting for yourself, and you're just hoping to make this work. And the thing with this is, I think when you're in game and when you're actually taking these shots, it might be the case that you're trying to push too hard in certain spots. And that's what I've come to realize too. So in yesterday's session, I was actually talking about how I played a little bit too loose, how I was a little bit too fancy. Yeah, I'm at like light call downs and stuff. You know, deep inside, I actually think that I wanted to make this shot work. I was trying to continue this this awesome progress that I was making. And I was just rooting for myself too much. And that's the reason for me pushing those small edges, I think. And you know, that was really pretty risky, and it actually set me back. And the danger of getting into a setback by having that kind of attitude is probably very high. And it doesn't really matter, like, you know, the stakes don't matter to me. It's just the matter of success or succeeding. So it's the same feeling if I'm starting the challenge at 2 NL and I'm moving up to 5 NL. I do want to make this work because I want to make some quick and steep progress, because you guys are also watching. There's also a little bit of like pressure behind this, you know, that I want to make this work. I want to make this up to you, up to me, you know. That shouldn't be an issue, but deep inside it is. And I think this is something that everybody is looking at when they're moving up in stakes. And you know, maybe sometimes it's, for that reason, maybe sometimes it's a little bit more sensible to just sit back and wait a little and win more stacks at your current level until you have enough money that you can say, okay, I'm going to be able to lose like 10 to 20 stacks even, and I won't have to move down. And that's a decision that everybody has to take for him or herself. You know, for me, it's not a big deal. The only thing that I'm looking at is succeeding in the grinding up process. So the money doesn't really matter to me at all. But you know, it's a kind of, you know, I really want this to work because I'm doing this challenge and I'm doing this video, so I'm behind this, you know. And for me, this is poker after all. It doesn't matter what stakes I'm playing, and that's why I'm really invested into this. So that's just something that I have been thinking about this morning when I worked out, actually. And I thought it would be quite interesting to talk about it from more of a little bit of a philosophical standpoint, you know. So let's get into the action here for the remaining couple of minutes. Ace-4 suited, I'm going to flat in the big blind. This is pretty easy to defend against that small open. Gut shot, 1 over, backdoor flush draw, pretty easy call. He shouldn't be bluffing this turn too much, I don't think, so we can now safely fold the turn. What else can I talk about today? Except for some whining about the downswing. There weren't many questions this time. I checked out the comments and I also checked out the tweets and the Twitter, so there wasn't really much to get into. I saw some guys asking me about some specific situations, like when to call with small poker pairs from out of position, or what my standard play with hands like tens and jacks and ace queen is when I'm defending the blinds. And you know, those kinds of things, they're really so specific. It's really tough to get into that topic, and it would blow this video completely out of proportions. And you know, it would be something for like an entire coaching session, looking at specific hand histories, looking at strategies against different types of opponents, looking at their stats, at their tendencies, all that kind of stuff. You know, all I can say is regarding the situation with small pocket pairs from out of position, you're usually best off folding, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be folding them every single time. The thing is, you just have to be thinking about the type of opponent you're playing against. If you think that your opponent is not going to be very likely to make mistakes post-flop or pay you off in any way when you hit a set, then you're best off folding pre-flop or finding a different way, like 4-betting. But, you know, that's something, at these stakes, it's just, you know, you don't want to get into that. Yeah, I'm going to obviously call against that small 3-bet. And the same applies for the top range hands, the hands like ace, queen, pocket jacks, pocket tens. I know these are pretty close hands, and they can go all ways, all different ways. You can 3-bet them, you can call them. It really depends on the opponent type. And I'd always think that so my baseline would be the more likely your opponent is, the more your opponent is likely to be making mistakes post flop. This is interesting. Why did he check the turn? Can he ever have a bluff here? Wouldn't he be betting his high hearts on the turn? Did I just make 2 pair? The price is so good, and it just looks like, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna pay him off there. But you know, like randomly betting a hand on the river with that size, I'm not sure. I was just thinking that any heart would have bet the turn. Like any weaker player would most likely be betting the turn with a heart, any heart really. Because to recreational players usually think of flushes the same way. You know, they just think, I just made a flush and I'm going nowhere with a flush. So I'd expect them to bet the flush on the turn. So yeah, I was talking about these specific kinds of situations. Yeah, my baseline would be, just think about how you perceive your opponent. If you are thinking about your opponent, if you think that your opponent is the type of player that is likely to make mistakes post-flop, and you know how to kind of handle his lines that he uses post-flop, then go for it. Flat out of position, 3-bet your medium strength hands. I mean, 3-betting jacks, tens, ace, queen from the blinds against the late position open can never be that wrong. Of course, against an early position open, that's a different story. But you know, it just depends so much on the opponent, and it would really. This topic is just you could go on for ages. You can write entire books about this, and look at specific sample situations. So at least that Zoom session is going quite well so far. Let's refresh the Hold'em Manager. So 405, made a $4 profit that session. Min raise on the button, I'm going to defend. And I'm going to sit out on the next big blind occasion. So at least we had some action going on, not too many big pots, but some interesting small ones. I don't think people are folding ace high here, and they're checking down like any pair, and they're probably also calling any pair on the river. So I don't think it's a good idea here to bluff. Right, I'm just going to sit out next hand, and I'm going to call this a video. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Hope for some better news tomorrow, and see if we can realize the plans of finally making regular steps at 25 on 25NL by the end of the week or the beginning of next week. Right, this is it for today's episode. Check back tomorrow for episode 22. Keep grinding it up. See you tomorrow.